What is going on, everybody? It's your boy GLG Ryan back with another video today, and it's been a while since we posted. We just did a stream recently, but I wanted to actually do a video covering some of what we are going to be seeing post-ban list of OP10 in terms of just tier list and what we think is going to be really controlling the meta. I think right now is like the best time of any to be trying out new decks, seeing what works for you, seeing what has good tech options and stuff, because there's not a lot of decks that are super controlling the meta. There is like some obvious ones here and there, but I think a lot of decks have good options to take care of those top tier decks, as well as try to find their way up to high placements. So I think there's a lot of tech options that can be happening. So I think without further ado, we should just get in right into the start and mention our number one leader, in my opinion, with the most aggro build that you can get is Zoro. I think Zoro is, in my opinion, up there with Shanks in terms of the best leaders in this format currently because of how fast it can go and how little removal there now is. Due to that, Zoro has been topping out a lot, and that's just due to his zoo package. He always seems to have shit up when it can come with us, always seems to have the 3-drop Tony Chopper. His curve is insane. He can build the board really wide really quickly and then boost him with his leader to give a 1k to everybody, and then use things like Hiking Bear to boost even higher. So he can swing pretty high, pretty quick, and if he sees what he needs, it goes really favorable towards him. That being said, Zoro can tend to brick sometimes, just seeing like a lot of rush cards, so maybe Kid Killers, maybe you see too many 3-drop Zoros, you just start to see too many cards that have no counter, and the bodies that you put on board are just insta-kill, because you're not going to be able to protect them with nothing in hand. So I think Zoro has a really good matchup into a lot of like current decks that are topping out in the format, and I think that's why I'd put him in the top of the S tier right now, up there, maybe even higher than Shanks. That one's kind of a toss-up right now. Just to also mention, get this out the way, I put this whole NA bracket here because I don't think I'm going to cover every leader. I don't think it's reasonable. It's going to be way too long of a video, and I don't think a lot of these play too well in this current meta, but I think, like I was saying, you can always test out any of these decks right now and try them out, and you might actually end up doing pretty good, because I don't think anything's sitting horribly right now. Obviously, there's better decks than others, but even like Dragon or Odin here, I've seen Gecko Moria do decent. There's, leaders. Odin has that new package that came with it. There's leaders that you can play all over the place now, so I think it's viable to try any of these out, but we're not going to cover them for the sake of this video's time. Moving on, we got Dofi. Dofi I'm going to put in high A tier. I think he's like pretty up there, but I don't think he's quite S in my opinion. I think his consistency died in terms of Jinbei, not being able to see them to really build that board stupid quick. Like, you used to be able to fill up the board by turn 3 and your board was full. So I think that was just one of the best ways to play this deck easily. But now you can only put out 1 to 2 bodies a turn. You can't, at like end game, you can start putting out like 3 bodies a turn and just overload the board. That's true enough, but I think currently you're just kind of putting out 1 body, and if there's people who can answer that, such as like Shanks's can answer that decently with things like their blockers and stuff that KO those bodies, and then unless you have the bounce law, which works really well into that, or other decks that do have some base removal because it's not the tallest bodies, like Smoker and Lucci, even Blackbeard sometimes can get rid of those bodies. So, it's not super strong, but it's definitely one of the strongest leaders still in this meta today. I kept Newgate in here. I'm going to put him in D tier, but I'd even argue to say C tier, just because I think people know how to play into Newgate now, and I think he's super aggro, and you have to play him really fast to actually get any value out of him. But I think as a whole, the fact that his ability takes the life out of his own hand, you don't even have to focus on his face by that point in time anymore. You can just focus on killing his bodies on board every turn, doing whatever you need to, and then just waiting till he basically kills himself, and then you kill him to finish him off. You swing the final hit just to finish him off. So I think those easy ways to play into Newgate, and I think a lot of people know how to play into Newgate now, and there's a lot of cards that, like character cards nowadays, that can outpace Newgate, such as that 3-drop Sanji that just immediately gives you value with a swing into him. So I think this card isn't as strong as it used to be. It used to be really, really good, but now it's kind of lower tier for sure. But I think it still sits in the tiers due to the fact that it is a 6k leader. Smoker. Smoker I'm putting down in B tier. I don't think his removal is as great as it used to be, especially with not being able to see those Gecko Morias stay so consistent. Tashigi is a really good card, but you do rely pretty heavily on seeing it consistently. And if you don't see it, it's just kind of a rough game from then on out because you won't be able to KO things as easily. And if your curve, especially if you're playing a board that's like maybe a Zoro, you really can only KO one thing at a time with this deck. Sometimes too, if you get the good Rob Lucci curve with enough like cards to minus, but even then you're just trashing cards. So I think this is a good deck, but I think it really only is good if you're playing against a slower deck that only puts like one body on the board at a turn. And Dofi might be a good matchup for Smoker right now if you see your curve. Moving on from there, we got Nami. Nami, I'm going to put in B tier as well, but I'm going to put it below Smoker because I think with this state of wide boards coming in and everything just becoming really fast, I think Nami is going to have a rough time holding cards in hand, specifically with counter and stuff, to be able to mill out this whole time. So I think she's going to rely on seeing a really good curve, and if they don't see that, it's just going to be kind of a tragedy for them going forward because everybody's going to build a really wide board really fast and then just turbo them down. And there's not much Nami can do. Nami only works with 10 Dawn a turn, at max. So if it isn't able to use all 10 of those Dawn and it's just getting swung into a bunch, you're gonna start just hitting life at some point in time. You can't avoid it. And especially with the current state of yellow being able to trash life so much, I think Nami's having a difficult time due to that. So as a whole, I think Nami has moved down a bit, but I think it's still a strong deck in terms of fighting off anybody who's not swinging as wide. Katakuri is a great example of that. I'm going to put Cat below Nami just because I think Cat has a bad matchup into Nami because it does play slower and Nami can counter out of its swings and then use its off times to mill out with like Kaya's and stuff. But I think Cat's still really strong. I don't think he should be slept on at all. I think Cat always suffers from what Cat will suffer from, and that's not enough card draw with Cat. So you will have to play your curve really well, but you do have a really strong curve now if you're going second. You can always go Parasparrow swing, 6 drop, 6 mom, 8 Dawn. You can either go Cat or 7 mom, and then 10 Dawn. You can play with whatever you really need to at that point in time. So I think Cat has one of the strongest curves in terms of the game, but I think it's just very obvious as to what he's going to play out and when he's going to play it out. And I think this curve becomes really bad when you go into matchups like Blackbeard or Purple Luffy. Anybody who can really turbo out a field or somebody who can negate your own play effects will really kill Cat and a lot of yellow decks just because you're just building that field and swinging them so much. Like triggers will help, but it will only help near the end game. So if you start seeing all these really good triggers like mid game, it's not going to be as effective. Now, moving on from there, we've got Green Purple Dofi. I'm willing to put him C tier. I don't think he's amazing. I don't think he's that bad either. I think Green Purple Dofi, the reason I kept him on this tier list, I was thinking about just putting him in the NA, but I think Green Purple Dofi actually got some support with this most recent set for Sugar. He got that 8-drop Dofi, so he can ramp a Dawn on his turn at 8 Dawn. He can also restand more Dawn because of that. And then he's also got the Rosinante that allows him to trash events to draw more cards, and that helps a lot with Dofi being able to draw more. I just think Dofi has seen a little bit more boost, but I still don't think it's as good as some of these other leaders up here to really be a strong contender in this meta. I do think the Birdcage package is pretty good right now due to the fact that leaders like Zoro and Dofi are still pretty strong because these boards are wide but they're not tall, and so you can freeze all of their characters on the field, and that becomes really good, especially if you run things like Nora, which will rest those characters. So I think Dofi can contend really well, but it's against very specific decks. Otherwise, things like Shanks will just run him over. Moving on from there, we have Rebecca. Now, this is kind of a hot take. I'm going to put Rebecca in B tier just below Smoker. I think Rebecca actually got a lot of support with this most recent set for Usopp that came in with those Dress Focus package in terms of the Kyros, or you can run the really good card, which is the Zoro for Rebecca. You can run the 7-drop Rebecca, which I don't think a lot of Rebeccas run that one, but I think it's really good if you want to get a good tempo pace in. So I think Rebecca saw some good support, and it helps out a lot, and I think Rebecca is even more consistent than Usopp in the fact that it can search even more than Usopp for Dressrosa package stuff. So I think this is a really good card right now. I don't think it's a top contender, but I think it helps out. It holds its own ground against these aggro decks that I'm telling you about, the Dofi and the Zoro, due to the fact that it can remove cards much easier than things like Smoker can, and it can do a couple. Like if it goes at 7 Dawn turn, and it does get the 7 Rebecca. It can do 2 of them in 1 turn, and then you even if you have a stage on field, you can even swing into a rested body with like a 9k Kiro swing. So you might even get rid of three bodies on field in 1 turn, which is just a really good pace for you. So I think Rebecca's been really strong due to that fact, but I don't think it quite contends with some of these upper decks that will just rush him down at the end of the day. Moving forward from there, we have Bello Betty. I'm going to put Bello Betty probably below Rebecca, but above Nami, because I think Bello Betty has a good chance of taking out these decks with the speed that it runs it at. It runs very similar to these, but just requires much more because it's doesn't have a great draw engine, and you kind of need a good draw engine into a lot of these metas right now, just to keep your hand healthy if you're going to be playing out so many bodies. And the problem with Bello Betty is her leader ability. You do have to trash a card. So not only are you playing bodies from hand, but you're trashing a card from hand. So you could get rid of like 3 cards on your turn and then have to counter next turn as well. So you're just going to be like almost empty by your following turn and not know what to do. So I think Bello Betty has a rough time. You do rely on triggers a lot. But I think the rush variant of it, if you can get some big bodies out, like some just 5Ks, and you start swinging 8Ks and just power somebody down, Bello Betty's the type of deck that you usually want to capitalize in the early game and try to even kill somebody before they even get to like 10 Dawn, because you don't want them drawing that many cards that quickly. And I think they really capitalize when they're playing against any 4-life leaders. So Bello Betty is strong, but I think removal decks like Smoker and Becca just hard counter it because the bodies they play out are only like 5 to 4 or less, sometimes a dragon if they get it. And then that those 4 and 5 or lesses just get removed off field, and then boom, they're gone. So Betty's turn is over, and they have like no cards in hand. So that's the problem with Betty, is they tend to just fall off when it comes to holding a hand size, and then they just end up losing in the end of the game. But it is strong nonetheless due to the fact that it can swing so tall and so wide quickly if it gets its plays out. Moving on from there, we've got Purple Luffy. Purple Luffy I'm putting in the S tier. Putting it under Zoro, because Zoro should beat the Luffy, in my opinion. If they see a good curve, I think their curve is going to be better than Luffy's curve because it's earlier on. They can swing smaller earlier, chipping away at Luffy's hand, forcing him to try to take their life, which is not what Luffy wants to do. But I think Purple Luffy has one of the best curves in the whole game. I think its curve of 4 Dawn for Zoro to search, 7 Dawn for Luffy Taro into Sangoro, and then 9 Dawn into Big Mom is just so overpowering and can be done in 4 turns. It's just amazing to watch it happen if it really does happen, because you're like, yeah, well, the game's basically over by that point in time, because the next turn they're going to be at 10 Dawn. And if they're really lucky, they've probably already seen a Gum Gum Giant or 2, and they're just going to be able to protect themselves. They now have 4 bodies established on field. Maybe you've gotten rid of 1, maybe 2, if you're lucky, but they have a lot of counter in hand. They're going to have a lot of ways to remove your bodies with things like their Sanjis that'll rest, 6 or lesses, their moms that'll put it into life, so they can heal themselves. I think Luffy's just really strong right now, and then also having one of the best finisher cards, which is that 10-drop Gear 5 Luffy. Yeah, that Time Walk is just will annihilate you if you let it. If you leave them at 1 life and they can time walk, they can swing a bunch of swings and then time walk Luffy to finish you off. It's gonna hit hard and you're not gonna be able to do anything about it. So I think they have one of the best curves right now and some of the best cards to work with. I just think it's hard for them to always see that curve. It's kind of a perfect situation if they do. And that's why I think things like Zoro run it better, because it can do smaller curves and swing more often than Luffy can, because Luffy relies on seeing that tall curve and getting to that end game, but he also has to take his life. So similar to Newgate in that sense, they're killing themselves. So if they don't see a great curve, it could just be a wipe for Purple Luffy. But moving on from there, we got Enel. Enel, I'm going to put above Cat and Nami for sure. I think Enel is still strong. He's just not as good. I'll put him above Bello Betty too. And Rebecca, actually. I think Enel's... I'll even put him above Smoker, actually. I'm gonna move him all the way up to the top of B tier. I guess it's not letting me. There we go. I'm gonna move him all the way up to the top of B tier because I think Enel is still strong in a lot of decks. But I think the problem that we see is Blackbeard's a really strong contender in this meta, and a lot of people play him the most. Um, and if an Enel sees a Blackbeard, it's kind of over. There's not much they can do. Most, if not all, of their cards run off on play effects. And if a Blackbeard just bides their time and just starts wiping their on-play effects near the end of the game at 8 Dawn, they're not doing anything. They're done. Like, the game's over because they're going to be playing out just 8k bodies or 8-drop bodies or 10-drop bodies, and it's not going to be able to do anything. So it's really rare for an Enel to beat a Blackbeard. So I think Enel has a rough time, especially with 10-drop Blackbeard that gets rid of their leader ability, so they wouldn't be able to replace that life. So they'll be sitting out, if they're at 1 life, they'll be at 1 life, and that'll be it. So I think Enel hurts a lot there, and it also hurts with this big wide meta that also rushes you down really strong. So I think Enel as a whole has moved down a couple tiers, especially with Kingdom Come being gone. They now can't just pop anybody they want to, so I think this leader isn't as good as it once was, but it's still strong, and it will only get stronger when that 10-drop Enel comes out with Rush, allowing you to place a life at the top. But I think for now, Enel's going to sit in the high B tiers and be able to beat these decks, but not, some of the top contenders. Moving on from there, I put in this one, Reiju. Reiju is in between Enel and behind Enel. I can't really tell as of right now. I'm going to put it above Enel because I feel a little more confident about it. Not because I think it beats Enel. I think it beats most of these decks behind it. I don't know if it quite has a better play out into Enel unless it sees a really good curve. I play Reiju. This is why I'm a little biased on this one. I think Reiju is a great deck. I think it still is very strong, especially with the Sanji Searcher it got. It has more searchability now. So you just play a lot of searchers to try to see your curve more often and try to get your stage going. And I think the best part about Reiju is it's really strong in this current meta too, because much like this meta, it plays fast and it's it attacks strong and wide, and it can even go tall with your 7-drop ECG. That 7-drop ECG that can get played out off of Porsche. You're basically just getting a really efficient turn 2 play if you go 3-drop Porsche into 4-drop ECG, which goes and powers out a 7-drop ECG. If you can get that curve, you're looking really strong in the beginning because now you've developed a 5-drop, a 5k, a 7k, and you get your 5k leader swing. And the next turn you can kind of play around and do whatever because you're only going to be on turn 3 by that next turn. So you've got opportunity to even play out like a Black Maria just to revive your Dawn or something like that. But I think Reiju has a really good curve. It's just not as consistent as some of these other decks, and that is why I think I'd put it in B tier. But I think it will get better coming into OP11 when it gets more support in the package. For now, though, I think we'll stick with it in B tier. Moving on from there, we've got Bonnie, another S tier deck. Bonnie, I would even argue, is a little above Luffy, just in the fact that the Luffy curve is really good, like I said, but Bonnie also has a excellent curve now, has a lot of really good green cards that have come in. Hody Jones will always be a great card for this. I think your 10-drop Dofi, your 5-drop Cavendish, 5-drop Smoker now becomes a card. You've got like all these different green cards that are coming out for Tashi to help it stop any removal. I think that Bonnie has seen a lot of support unintentionally from it, and the fact that the matchup into Blackbeard isn't horrible, I think Bonnie can thrive off of that. But the problem is if they see a bunch of 10-drop Blackbeards, it kind of hurts because you can't use your leader ability, and that stinks because you're just setting up 1 Dawn for nothing. But I think as opposed to the rest of these decks, in opposition to the rest of these decks, it's pretty good because it can rest one of the attacks from each character here, and then it can use that to swing into those characters next turn, like a Zoro or something like that. So you can rest one of its blockers and swing in. So I think Bonnie has a good matchup into a lot of these decks, and with the value of 9 Shanks to KO any rested character and the leader ability to rest any character, I think that value is just insane. Moving on from there, we've got Boa. I don't even know. I think Boa, I'm going to put her here in top of B. I've heard Boa is pretty good. I have played Boa a few times in OP10, and I've tried. It must be a user error. I don't know. But I try with Boa so many times, and I have yet to see good success rates with her because the consistency is not there. It's too slow of a deck for this meta. You play any of these top tier decks, it's just too slow. You're not keeping pace at all because you're playing out like one body a turn because now you don't have Jimbei, and so the Warlords package isn't as good anymore. You can play the 4-drop Law, but the 4-drop Law is much more effective when you're playing with Dofi than it is when you're playing with Boa because you have to hard cast it and you don't really get a great swing off of it, and then you got to play out your Jozu next turn. It's just, in terms of a curve, I don't think it's the best curve I've ever seen. I think it plays a little too slow and it requires you to bounce too many cards and have the right counter in hand, because if you end up bricking in hand, you won't be able to counter out, which will mean you won't get the best effect off of the leader ability. So you really need to have counter in hand to counter out of things so that you can get use out of the leader ability. Otherwise, you're not using it effectively. That's kind of why I think Boa is a B tier deck right now, and maybe over time we'll see some more support for Boa that will allow like Kuja Pirates to get more boosted out bodies. So who's to say? Moving on, we got our next C tier leader. I'm gonna put Foxy above Dofi here. Oh man, I can't do it. There we go. I'm gonna put Foxy above Dofi because I play with Foxy a little bit. It's another one of those decks that kind of suffers from seeing a good curve is like necessary for them. You definitely need to see a Porsche, and you definitely want to, if not need to, see your 7-drop Foxy to get that -1k. It's the Shanks before Shanks, in which you get the -1k to everybody, but it's much more easy to remove. And then you also can add Arrested Dawn from your Dawn deck. Now, the thing about Foxy is you kind of need that to get good usage out of your leader ability, as well as keep yourself alive because you're not ditching as many cards. Because you do have to proc this leader ability, you do have to have 3 Foxy Pirates on board, which means at minimum you will have to have played 3 cards from your hand to be on board, and these aren't tall bodies. Foxy does not play super tall bodies. They play Porsche, and then you can play usually like maybe you want to play a Pickles, maybe you want to play a Tony Chopper Blocker, maybe you want to play the guy that's like a 0k power that also adds a Dawn. I can't remember his name, but usually that's the play, is the portion that 0-drop to add a Dawn, and then you go like 7-drop when you can. So the problem with Foxy is it's not tall swings, it's wide swings. And you can freeze your opponent's leader and a character on the field, which is really good, but there is ways to play around it, and that's why I think Foxy has seen less of like competition in terms of the current meta, because there's just really fast decks, and freezing 1-2 swings doesn't really help when somebody can just put another rusher on the field and swing into you, and then they still get another swing out. So I think Foxy has fallen off a little bit, especially with purple being such a bricky hand size, regardless of what you play. Going from there, we've got Rob Lucci, another one of our A-tier leaders. I think Rob Lucci still has really good removal. I think the fact that it's a leader that has a when attacking ability to minus to a character, it's not much minus, it's -1, I think, or -2, I can't remember. It's not a lot, and so you do get a little bit of wiggle room in terms of trying to figure out how to math out to remove a body off the field. And so I think Rob Lucci stays strong for that reason, as well as seeing a lot of good CP package cards helps out a ton. But in terms of black leaders, it's one of the stronger ones for removal, guaranteed, but without the usage of Gecko, Ice Age, cards like that, it's just kind of hurting a lot, and I think it has fallen down a bit. So it's not quite the S tier that it once was. It doesn't have as much, value plays with Gecko and stuff. So I think it's not the best, but still really strong. Don't get me wrong with that. Moving on from there, we got another A tier. I'm going to put Marco just below Rob Lucci because Marco, similar to Rob Lucci, has good removal. It's a control style deck, being blue and red, but the red is purely to minus power is the concept of that. And then you use it to KO those bodies by either swinging in or using cards like Newgate that will KO a 5k or less. But I think as a whole, Rob Lucci is better at removal than Marco is. And so some people are just playing a very aggro Marco build. But I think Marco wants to play control, and I think it's just in a confused area right now. But it is still really strong, being one of the best leaders currently to use the 9 Sanji. I would say it's one of the strongest for that reason. So Marco is good, it's just not as good as some of these other decks, and it also does have the ability to turbo out bodies, much like Dofi and Zoro in them, especially with the ability of people seeing things like the 3-drop Avant-Gob that people have been playing, and then using the leader ability to put a card on the top of your deck, and then play out the Avant-Gob to play out a second body that's 2-drop. Not really a tall body, but it's something nonetheless, and so I think Marco has some value plays for sure, but I think Lucci just does a little bit better, and I think all these decks do a little bit better at building a board better than Marco can do, especially with Bonnie being able to stop any KOs from things like Marco. Moving on from there, we have another C tier above Foxy. We're going to do Pudding here. Pudding's really good, but it's just another one of those curve-dependent decks. You really want to see... you really want to go first. You want to swing on your 3-on turn, use your leader ability to ramp up to 4, and then you want to be able to have the person swing into you, you take that life, and then you play out the 6-drop cat, get an extra Dawn, swing with leader, get an extra Dawn, next turn you're just 10 dropping. That's the perfect curve for Pudding. They would love to see that. But when they don't see it, things kind of go a little haywire, it doesn't go so smoothly, it starts to kind of falter a little bit, and people can start controlling them a lot easier at that point in time, especially with the fact that boards are going so wide. They're burning a lot of cards out of hand. Being a 4-life leader makes it even worse. So, I think the worst part about Pudding is it's just a little worse than Cat in terms of Cat can survive a little bit longer due to being 5-life, and it can counter out of things, whereas Pudding being a 4-life leader, it still relies on triggers, but it runs purple cards in there too, so it's less triggers that are manipulating life. And on top of that, when you do get to your 10-drop turn, you're already in a scary area to be playing your 10-drop because you're probably at 1 life, if not less, and you won't have as much value out of that 10-drop play as somebody like Cat might be at like a 2-life turn, because then you're going up to 3 and they're going down. In this one, you're going up to 2 and they're going down, so it's not as good. But it's still, okay, and you can definitely see it in some local tournaments. But I think as of right now, Pudding isn't the strongest yellow leader that's out there. Shanks, above or below Zoro? That's the question here. I'm going to put it below. I'm going to put it above. I said that Zoro might be the strongest. I take that back. I think Shanks is the strongest right now. I think it has some of the best rush variations. Its leader ability gives you the ability to stop a lot of these wide attacks, at least 1 a turn, and then survive until you get your 10 Shanks. And then when you do get your 10 Shanks combined with your leader ability is just lethal. They have so much protection. They run so many 2Ks. They run great bodies for removal and controlling and rushing, and it's just the Shanks build right now is really, really good, and I've only seen success stories from it, so I think Shanks is one of the best leaders, if not the best leader in the meta currently. I think it has some of the best control cards, as well as some of the best rush cards in the game that it can utilize. I think it's just really, really strong right now, and you'll see it in the tops for a while until we get something that can kind of control their board more. So we'll just move on from there, because I don't think there's any point in talking more about Shanks. I think we've all seen a Shanks, we've all played a Shanks, we know how they run, and currently they're running really good. Moving on from there, I'm going to put Lim at the top of A tier right now. Yes, I'm putting it above Dofi, even though it's it's a 4-life leader. I do that because it can develop bigger bodies quicker, and now with some of Lim's cards, you can actually, a lot of cards you can just restand at the end of your turn, which allows for like some great plays of just restanding your whole board essentially, not having the Lim ability be too effective, and then being able to block out of a lot of things because you run a lot of 5-drop blockers and 3-drop blockers and stuff, and then you just get up to your 9 Zoro as quick as possible, and then boom, like the board, if you keep that thing on board, the board's yours, like you've won. So Lim is really good right now, and I think it will, if it sees any more support than it already has, it'll get better. I think it's one of the A tier decks, and it'll kind of stay that way for a little bit, but As of right now, I'm putting it in the high A tiers, but it's definitely not in the S because it can't quite keep up with a lot of these other decks that can just swing into them hella fast, and like Bonnie being able to rest things and Luffy putting out big bodies to swing into these characters. I think it's just gonna hurt it a lot more down the line. Buggy. Buggy is one of the leaders we got from OP9. I think it's C tier. I don't think it's B tier. I think it's like a high C tier because it's got some good support with that promo buggy that came out to boost out a Mihawk that will stop the buggy stops any 3 and 4 drop swings for the turn, which is really, really good against things like Dofi. And so when he was like in the current meta, I would have put this guy in B because you would have seen Dofis everywhere and Buggy would have been able to stop all those Dofis. But as of right now, I think the fact that he has to trash a card from hand to use his ability and then play out a card, and then he's usually playing out 2 cards, that means he's trashing 3 cards on his turn. It's very similar to Betty in that sense, but the difference is Betty can swing a lot taller, faster, whereas Buggy can swing tall, but it's not as fast. It's a slower deck. So I think Buggy struggles in that regards, but the benefit to this one, it is a 5-life leader. So I think Buggy will probably get some support in the future, but as of right now, it's going to sit in C tiers because of the fact that it's trashing itself out of so many cards so quickly. Moving on from there, I put Purple Black Luffy in this because I think it's still a pretty good deck. I'm even willing to say that Purple Black Luffy is up here in the B tiers. So much so that I would put it above. I'm gonna put it above Boa. I think Purple Black Luffy is kind of a slept on deck. I think it's one of the fastest ramping decks that I've seen. It gets the best value out of ramp because you usually get to set at least 2 more active after you ramp, so you get do really good swings. It has the ability to give +1 to all of your characters, so you're just keeping your bodies alive on field. Yeah, I mean, what more can be said about it? It definitely hurts that it doesn't have that Gecko value play, but I still think it's very strong. Has a lot of removal ability. Has a lot with the Sanji has a lot of removal ability. Has a lot of removal ability with the Top Knot. So I think it runs very well. I just think it struggles being a 4-life leader and Purple Black, which is the most bricky 2 colors you can get. So because of that, it tends to lose out to a lot of these Rush variant decks a lot easier. But as of right now, I don't think it's in such a bad position to where you can even put it in C tier because it does have access to a really good card called Gum Gum Giant that allows it to stay alive a lot longer near the end game. Moving on from there, we've got Nico Robin. Nico Robin, I'm going to put a below Buggy, but above Pudding in terms of a yellow-purple deck. I do that because I think Banish is just a better swing. I think with the current set of yellow cards that came out that just allow you to trash a bunch of life from your opponent with your Kid, your 4-drop, Basil Hawkins, and then your leader banishing and the Nico Robin that also trashes a life. There's so much value in terms of trashing life that they won't get any sort of effects out of their life. They won't get any counter, they won't get any hand fill, they won't get any triggers. So this is pretty good, but the problem with it is, much like Buggy, it has to trash a card to ramp, which sucks because then it's losing cards itself, and that's going to hurt it down the long run of the game. But as of right now, I think the current strategy for this is go get as fast as you can to 10 Dawn, play out a 10-drop Kaido Lin, pray that it sticks, and then play out some 4-drop Basil Hawkins and swing with the Kaido Lin, KOing everything on board, including those Basil Hawkins, trashing all of the life from your opponent, and then you also trash a life with the Kaido Lin, and then you regain a life. So you basically will just like kill your opponent in 1 turn at that 10 Dawn turn, but that's if your 10 Dawn sticks. So it's pretty rare for it to happen, but if it does happen, it's really good. Moving on from there, we've got Blackbeard. Blackbeard, I'm going to put just below these Rush decks. I think Blackbeard just gets dunked on by Rush decks. I think Rush just hurts Blackbeard so bad because they don't want to be taking... I mean, they do want to be taking their life, but not so quickly as to where when they get to their 10 Dawn turn, they've got 1 life left, and somebody has like 3-4 bodies on board, and they can just swing into them over the 10-drop and force them to block with the 10-drop and then just keep swinging at them. burn all their cards. They won't be able to use their leader ability to play on-play effects. So I think the fact that these rush decks are in a top tier right now, and decks that play out a lot of bodies, Blackbeard will struggle. But as a whole, Blackbeard is still one of the best decks in the format, being able to move a lot of on-play effects, because on-play effects are such a huge card in the current meta. A lot of decks have like just only on-play effects. That's why Nell just gets dunked on, Cat gets dunked on. Even things like Zoro with the Tony Choppa won't get anything. Shanks won't get anything off of their Ben Beckmans and stuff. So Bonnie won't get anything off of their cards. So when you think about it like that, the on-play effects are huge in this current state of the game. So I think it's rough if you don't see them being utilized at their most efficient value. So Blackbeard is really good for that reason. Moving on from there, we got Smoker. Smoker is sitting just below Dofi, in my opinion. I think Dofi's more consistent and has a stronger curve than Smoker does, but Smoker, if it does see its 5 into 3 Tashigi to develop that on turn 3, and then you can, once you get up to your 8 Dawn curve, you can play out that Eustace Kid. If you can get all that, you're looking really good, but that requires that you get all that and that you're not getting rushed down the whole time. Because if you do get rushed down and it requires you to counter a lot, by the time you get that Eustace Kid on board, you don't have enough cards in hand to support it. So you're going to have to rely on your blockers, and so that means you have to have even more cards in hand that are reliable. So it becomes a problem at that point in time. But I think if you can play a good curve and you play it well and keep yourself Dawn efficient and card efficient, you can actually pull out a lot of games with this card. I think this leader isn't as bad as people make it out to be. I think it has really good Dawn efficiency with its ability to restand the Dawn, and also giving a lot of your characters plus 1k power during the opponent's turn makes it really hard to get rid of some of those bodies. So Smoker I'd put in the A tiers, but I don't think it quite beats out Lim or Dofi. Lim, due to the fact that it can put out bigger bodies and throw out that 9-drop Zoro that they can't really answer at that point in time, unless they have the Gum Gum Mold Gun plus other things. Moving on from there, we got Caesar Clown. Caesar Clown is definitely in the D tiers. I'm even willing to say it's NA. I don't think it's a good deck by any means. I think the best it can do is play out a card and then once a turn and then KO one of your cards, which is annoying. But if you go wide, they have like no chance of answering all of those cards. It can answer one card a turn at best, and then they have to bounce their card back. So they're not establishing a field. They're just swinging at your face. Caesar's not super great right now. Maybe they'll give it some support in the future, but as of right now, I think Caesar Clown was not given the best leader ability due to the fact that it has to bounce stuff back to your own hand too to use it. Just makes it to where you can't effectively build a board in a turn. So moving on from that, we've got Sugar. Sugar I'm going to put in the B tiers, but I'm going to put it in like a lower B tier. I'm going to probably put it just below Betty, just because I think Sugar's strong in the sense of being able to survive really long, but I don't think it has two things. One, it doesn't have a great card draw. The best it's got is like the Rosie, and then the blocker that like draws some trash, as well as the I can't remember the 5-drop card that allows you to draw a Dawn from trash, but then you also go Dawn Neg if you do that. So I think Sugar has some rough times in terms of seeing the right events at the right time. You would love to see red events when you start the game, so that way you can counter out and ramp. Whereas if you see purple events at the beginning of the game, you will have to go negative Dawn, then you will go positive Dawn, which means you're just evening out. So you want to ramp fast with this deck to get up to your 8 Dawn turn to play out your Dofi into your Rosinante. That's like the dream idea. But you end up seeing a lot more purple events than you do red events, and that can kind of hurt you down the long run because you're not ramping very quickly. So Sugar just has a rough time playing out against a lot of these decks that go wide again, because they can just swing, burn all the counter in their hand, and then they don't really have anything to answer back when it comes down to their last game turn when they have 2 cards in hand and they have to pray that they start seeing more counter events. So Sugar will be in the B tier. Moving on from there, we've got Law. Law is going to be a high C tier. I see it played. I don't think it's as good as some of these other decks in B tier. I think the fact that you have to take something from your life to play it out makes it, a self-killing deck, but it's a 4 life leader, so it's even worse in terms of self-killing. You don't want to really take your own life at 4 life because you're not going to be getting a very efficient play out that turn, because now you have to try to protect your life next turn, or else you're going to be going down really low really quick, and you might even put yourself in KO range before you even get to 10 Dawn. So the 7-drop Law is a critical card to see in this matchup. If you don't see that card, you're going to be regretting using leader ability at all points in time because you won't be able to refill that life. So I think Law is a C tier deck and kind of will stay that way until it gets some more support to refill its own life. Moving on from there, we got Usopp. Usopp, I'm going in bottom of A. I think it's really good. I love playing Usopp. It's super fun, but I don't think it's super consistent. In the sense of if you don't see your 7-drop Rebecca, you won't get a great turn when you get up to 7 Dawn, and you really want to go second and see that 7 Dawn Rebecca. You do have a lot of ability to search, but I think it doesn't, have a great curve if you're not seeing that 7-drop Rebecca, because then you won't get your 7-drop Kyros out and your 4-drop out, so that means you're not going to be able to max out what you want to be playing. Alright, had to take a little break there. It's a long list, so we're just going to kind of speed through these last 5. But we've got, Eustace Kid, so Yellow Kid here. I'm going to put Yellow Kid in B. I'm going to put it definitely above, all these decks, actually. I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's quite an A-tier contender. I don't think it's going to be topping that much, but I think the fact that you can put pretty big bodies as blockers and your whole game plan is just to trash your opponent's life like continuously using your blocker effects like your Basil Hawkins, and then your 8-drop Kid also will get that effect off. I think this is a really good deck for the trash ability, and just you're not allowing your opponent to see any cards from their life. So as a whole, Yellow Kid is not that bad, but I don't think it's quite a top out deck yet. Sanji, I'm going to put in C tier. I'm going to put in the tops of C tier. I don't think it's super good because it only can do really 1 body a turn. It can give it rush, but the problem is, and then people just swing into it, and just kind of has to rely on each turn to use those characters that they're rushing with to poke at the leader. This deck is a good matchup into like Blackbeard, due to Black being slow and Blackbeard not being one to get attacked that much at their life, but I think Sanji as a whole does not match up against a lot of these other decks that are above it. Red Purple Luffy, I'm going to put in the B tier bracket. I'm going to throw him above somebody right here. I'm going to put Red Purple Luffy, I'll probably put him like near the top of B tier, just because I think he's still very strong. I don't think he's as strong as before. I think with a lot of these decks being the meta now, just swinging really wide, really fast, it pokes away at his hand way too quickly, and then at the end of the game, they just are left with no cards in hand, and maybe like 1 Gum Gum Giant to try to fill themselves, and it's not enough to kind of stabilize them. And due to that, I think Red Purple Luffy will kind of sit in B tier for a little bit until it can find, gets back to that high removal decks again, where Red Purple Luffy will kind of shine because it can play out those giant bodies. Following that, we've got Uta. I put Uta in because I think Uta's like probably a B tier leader. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's terrible. I think it's actually pretty good because Green's a really good in a really good position right now. I think Uta has a great draw engine, using having leader ability to draw consistently. It also has access to the film package, which allows you to turbo out bodies really quickly. If you see your 7-drop into your Brook, into your Nami, put 3 bodies in on a 7 Dawn turn, it's really good. And then you also get access to the 9 Shanks that you can search out, which is just a strong counter to the 10-drop Shanks. So I think Uta can be played really well and can top out pretty effectively if it's played right. I think seeing a curve is not hard for Uta, but it's very predictable for Uta. Like, you know exactly what they want to play each turn, so you can plan for it. And I think that's the problem with Uta, is it's just super obvious as to what they're going to do next. And following the final leader that we're going to talk about this video is going to be Luffy, black, yellow. I'm going to put him in D tier. I'm going to put him just below Newgate. You could even argue to put him in, I'm going to put him in top C tier. I'm not going to drop him that low. Honestly, I might even put Newgate up here. I feel bad putting Newgate and Luffy with Caesar Clown. I think they're way better than that. I think Newgate's even above some of these decks here. I'd put it above Sanji. Above Law. I'm going to put Newgate up here. I like Newgate. I think Black Pearl Luffy lost a lot of engines with Kingdom Come being gone, Ice Age being gone, Gecko being gone, Black Yellow Luffy is just in a really bad area because you have to play everything out from hand. You're a little more risky when you take your life, so your babies aren't going to be as effective. You're not going to get as much value because you can't use that Gecko turn. So you have to like rely more on seeing your babies in hand and then playing them out, and then still trying to keep a big hand size, which is kind of impossible to do by that point in time. So Black Rebel Luffy lost a lot of value due to all the cards that it lost in this hit. So I think it is now a C tier deck and has way less consistency than it once does. But yeah, as a whole, you can kind of see how I ordered these top decks. I think these are definitely the top decks of the meta right now. This rush variation is really good, and the reason that these ones top out is because they have unique abilities that allow them to play really well against some of these rush variations. I think this is kind of how I see the format currently. I'm a little biased with some leaders like Uta and Reiju because I play them, but I think this is what I see the most often. I don't really see a lot of these decks, but I think, like I said, this set is really specific towards just trying something new out and seeing what you want to play. And so I think it's viable to try any of these leaders, and you can do good at any sort of situation as long as you're seeing what you want to. So without further ado, this is the end of the video. So as always, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share with a friend. And as always, GLG out.